So I'm really excited to share this lesson with you because it can help so many of you out there. If you're struggling with your drive and not hitting, as straight as you'd like, or maybe not achieving the distances you'd like, it could well be because you're cutting across the golf ball. So common. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how you can hit the driver more from the inside. So we're going to first of all discuss what that is. I'm going to show you some drills and some exercises to help you do it. I'm going to give you some really simple things that you can actually do on the course. And we're also then going to show you how to apply it to irons, because the things that we cover in the first section don't always apply to the irons. It's not necessarily going to work, but one it'll change and it can work. So let's start off with actually what do we mean by hitting from the inside? Well, we need to look at those two terms. We've got our target out there, which is the green. You can see I've got the alignment stick representing my target line. When we hit from the outside, effectively the golf club head is too far on the outside of the golf ball. And what that means is it's then always going to be cutting across the golf ball. And when we cut across the golf ball, generally two things happen. One, it robs you of distance because you're not transferring your energy as well as you could. And it generally puts a lot of spin on the golf ball and we get a lot of curve. Because we're using a golf club with very little loft and we're generally using a fair bit of speed, we impart a lot of spin. So when we talk about hitting from the inside, what we mean is that if you imagine my target line, it's that the golf club is inside of that line all the way to impact, and then the club head would return back towards the inside. So this is hitting from the inside. As soon as we get that club moving too much over here, that's hitting from the outside. Now I'm going to give you a little reference that you can use to monitor or look at your own golf swing to see whether this would apply to you. I'm going to take my setup, and if you're doing this at home and you can illustrate this on the screen, I'm looking to put a line from the end of the club shaft, so where the club shaft sort of meets the club head, all the way up through the bottom of my right elbow and then extend that line all the way up. So you can see that line on the screen there. Now, if my club head, as I approach the ball, is above or to the right of that line, this would suggest that you're cutting across the golf ball. What we're looking for you to achieve is, on the way down, your club is pretty much tracing down that line, or it would be slightly inside. Those would be ideal. That's how you're going to hit straight drives, or maybe some drives with a little bit of draw. Out here, you're going to get those shots that cut across it. So there's two ways we're going to do this. So I'm going to help you prime your backswing. So I'm going to give you some things, because in my experience, changing the backswing is much easier. Then we're going to give you one of my favorite drills to really generate the feels that you're going to need for your downswing. So let's take a setup. We've got that visual reference on there, so we know what we're trying to achieve on the downswing. Just think, this would be, relatively simple to think about this. If we want that club to come down that line or slightly inside, how much more difficult would that be if my backswing was like this? This is a backswing where I've not really rotated. Because I've not rotated, my arms are forced to go more upwards, and just look how much further away from that line my club is. Now, if you're a highly skilled golfer who practices and plays a lot, then yeah, sure, there could be a case where that golfer from here loops the club and finds the right position. But that's rare, really rare. Generally speaking, if your backswing isn't primed well enough, if you don't have the right amount of turn, if you tend to lift your arms a little bit and get your arms too high, more often than not, that's going to lead to a downswing like this. The club is on the outside, you're swiping across it, you're going to be hitting those sort of big fades. So the first thing you need to do is increase your body turn. Make it a free body turn. Do not, please, ever try and lock your legs in place, lock your hips in place, restrict the turn. I really don't like it when people talk to me about things like creating coil on the backswing, because that suggests there is resistance here. I like a really nice free turn, and a great visual for you and a concept is to get the grip of the golf club, so this end here, above my heels at the top of the swing, if not behind them. That would be a great feeling. Now, if I don't turn my body at all, it's impossible. It's just not feasible for me to do that. So if my goal in my backswing is to get the grip behind my heels, I'm more likely to turn into my right hip. Right leg is going to lose a little bit of flex. I feel a little bit more weight into my right heel. You can see just how much turn I've got. I've probably created some daylight between my legs, and that enables me to get the club a lot more behind my heels. Okay, and you can see these little rehearsals where I'm doing that. And again, this is a great little exercise. And I do feel a little bit of a stretch, but that's fine. I'm not trying to create that by holding my body. I'm trying to create that stretch just by how much I turn. So, downswing drill. And this is really important because many golfers try and hit from the inside or try and get the club into the delivery position in the incorrect way. Okay, you hold this part of the club, the grip. That's the only part that you hold. So whatever you do to this part of the club, there's going to be a reaction from the club head. That makes sense. Okay, if I put the club in this direction here, if I push the handle forwards, the club would react and actually fall backwards. You can see the club head falls sort of backwards. If I do it the opposite way, the club falls this way. So watch what happens when I get the club onto an angle, and watch what happens when I try and push my hands down and behind me. Okay, if I try and move my hands down and behind me, watch what happens to the club head. It reacts. It goes the opposite direction. Okay, I'm not trying to do that. I can hold it, you know, almost not really controlling the golf club. But if I move my hands down and back, club head is going to tip forward. Okay, this is not what we want. We've already said that line is on the screen. We don't want the club head out this way. So if I go to the top of my golf swing, and from here I try and pull my hands down, back and behind me, the golf club is likely to steepen. Then as you add a bit of turn, you're in a whole world of trouble now. Now you're really, really struggling and you're going to have to sort of really kind of jump out the way. So it's key that from the top, we actually allow the hands and the arms to move more out in front of you, but we want to keep the club head back behind. So here's the drill I want you to do. You can see on the side of the screen, whichever side Joe's put me, I'm against a wall. I'm around about a foot away from the wall. I've got my alignment stick. I'm making a backswing as normal. And I'm basically trying to get the alignment stick to make contact with the wall. And once it's in contact with the wall, I want to start my body rotation and I want to feel like my arms are moving back down in front of me. But I'm trying to move the alignment stick down that wall and keep it in contact with that wall until pretty much shoulder height, if not a little bit lower. Once it gets to that point, then as I turn, it will start to come off that wall. Now what you'll start to feel is you'll start to feel how that's changing what you do in your wrists and your forearms. Notice how I can keep my lead arm in place and move my grip down behind me. Okay, this is the move that's going to get you into that delivery position that we want. Simply moving the hands down like this is going to give you the exact reaction that you're trying to avoid. And that is so, so common because we think about our arms, our hands, they're connected to our body. It's easier to get those to go down. Surely that's the best way. Well, we've just explained why that's not the case. So that little exercise there against the wall, you can then take that to the golf club. So as I go to the top of my golf swing, watch what would happen if I simply tried to push that club head down that wall as I turned. I would be in a fantastic delivery position. Because I've pushed the club head down, it's now in that perfect delivery position, but the club also gets lower to the ground. When it's lower to the ground, it means that it's greater, or there is a greater chance of our low point being behind the golf ball. So we hit from the inside and we hit up on the golf ball. Oh, and that was a definite draw. Big draw on that one. I overshaped it because I was really trying to sort of work that club down, but do you know what, in practice that's absolutely fine. So if I was going to tee a ball up, how would I tee it up? Well, I could tee it and use the logo or the line that I have on my golf ball, and I could just put it on the back of the ball. But what I can do is I can change how I tee that ball up. I could turn that ball and place that line more on an angle. And what I've done there is I've created a little visual reference for how I want the golf club to approach that ball. So if I tee my ball up this way, that alone isn't going to suddenly make a huge swing change for me, but it's giving me a really nice idea, a nice concept. It's really helping me sort of visualize the golf club going down behind me and approaching from this inside position versus that poorer move, which would clearly hit sort of what I feel like the outside part of the ball. So I would love you to go ahead and think about how you tee your ball up. Just changing it visually on the tee can have a massive, massive change. That, along with this drill, which I've done before, but I make no apologies because it's brilliant, is going to help. Take a setup. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your golf club, you're going to use your upper body, you're going to rotate it, and so the club starts around about a foot behind the golf ball. Absolutely brilliant. What it does, it changes your shoulder alignment and it takes your circle and it shifts it a little bit out to the right. So we've now got a really nice visual over the golf ball. We've got the club starting nicely behind the ball. Those two little tricks or hacks or whatever you want to call them are brilliant for helping you hit from the inside. But now let's go through irons, because what we've just said doesn't necessarily apply to the irons. You have to make a couple of little changes. Why is it different with the irons? Ball is on the ground. With the driver, obviously we tee it up, and that makes a massive difference. We've spoken there about how the downswing shape, or the drills that I've explained and prescribed, would actually help you hit more up on the golf ball. So let's go through what we need to do with an iron. When we change the direction of our swing, when we change from, let's say, out to in to out, we also change low point, okay? So have a look at this. If I took my setup to this golf ball, if I made a swing where I was really over the top, swinging very much from the outside, my low point is likely to be after the golf ball. If I made a very extreme swing the opposite way, if I got to the top and I looped the club this way, pushed it down and swung out to the right, my low point is going to be much, much earlier. So what we can say is if you try and go from an out to in across swing, and you try and swing a little bit more in to out, hitting from the inside, your club will land sooner. So if you're swiping across the ball, but actually you're not making terrible contact, you're landing the club about in the right place, what will very often happen with the irons, when you go ahead and try and hit from the inside for the very first time, thump the ground before the ball. And you get terrible results. Now that was pretty extreme. I was trying to make sure I did hit the ground. But hitting the ground early is really common from someone who's trying to swing from the inside, because it's changing the geometry of your swing. So what you need to do with the irons, and this is really, really important, is as you're trying to hit a little bit more from the inside, to avoid the club landing some 1 to 2 inches before the ball, what would you have to do? Well, really simply, if the club is landing before the ball, you just need in your downswing more lateral shift. If I have more lateral shift, the club will land later. So if you want to change from an out to in swing, hit more from the inside, with the irons, you absolutely have to shift a lot more. And if you watch great players, and I'm talking really good players, the players that we watch on TV, you'll be very often surprised at how much lateral they have in their golf swing. I'm going to put a golfer here so you can see. I haven't decided who yet, so I'll mention their name, but you can see just how much laterally they're shifting. They have to do that. So if I want to be hitting my irons really solid and from the inside, I've got to be adding in lateral as I try and make those rehearsals that I did against the wall, because that's the only way I'm going to guarantee the strike. A lot of lateral shift, struck it pretty well, I'd be happy with that. So that's how you make a little change and take that whole process and apply it to your irons. But if you can do that, you'll hit longer drives, you'll hit straighter drives, and you'll probably hit better iron shots as well.